The rain fell hard across the broken city, cold drops mixing with ash and smoke in the air. A girl lay in the dirt, her body covered in mud, blood, and strange glowing marks on her skin. Her eyes opened slowly, wide and confused, but nothing inside her mind made sense. She did not know her name. She did not know who she was. She only knew the pain of fire in her chest. Around her were shattered pieces of metal, burned wires, and the smell of smoke. It was the remains of some kind of crash. But she could not remember how or why it happened. Her head pounded. Flashes of light filled her vision. Voices screaming in the distance of her memory. But every time she tried to hold the thought, it slipped away like water through her hands. The sky above was gray, heavy with storm, and the world around her felt empty and dead. Then came the growls, low and sharp, coming from the shadows of the ruined street. Her heart froze as glowing eyes appeared in the fog, many pairs of them, all watching her. Stray dogs, wild and starved, circled her slowly, their teeth bare, their paws splashing in the mud. She pushed herself up with shaking arms, her body weak, but her spirit refusing to give in. Her breath came fast, fear filling her chest. But something strange happened. The dogs did not attack her. They came closer, sniffing, growling, but not striking. One large beast, scarred across the face, stepped forward, his eyes meeting hers with a strange power. The girl's lips trembled. No words came out. But deep inside she felt a connection. Her body moved without thought, her hand lifted, resting carefully on the beast's wet fur. The other dogs growled louder, waiting for his signal. But the scarred one lowered his head. In that moment, the pack accepted her. Not as prey, but as one of their own. Time passed slowly, rain falling harder, her body shaking with cold. The dogs stayed close, curling around her, giving her warmth in the night. She tried to speak, tried to remember, but her tongue felt heavy and her mind broken. All she had were Flash's fire chains, screaming, and a name whispered in the dark days. Turned 2 nights. She followed the pack through the ruins. They scavenged for food, broken cans, rotten meat. Whatever they could find, she learned to crawl, to run, to eat like them. Her hands dirty, her face wild. The girl who once had a life, a name, maybe even a family, was now only a shadow of herself. But deep inside, she was not like the dogs. She felt something greater. She could hear the rhythm of their growls, understand their moods, feel their hunger. It was as if her blood carried something different, something more than human. And each night, when she lay under broken walls, she dreamed of fire, metal, and voices calling her. One night, lightning struck close, the sky exploding in white light. Her heart pounded as the flash brought back a vision. She saw metal cages, soldiers in dark armor, and hands holding her down. She screamed, waking the dogs, who barked and howled at the storm. She clutched her head, tears mixing with the rain. But the memory slipped away again. Only fear remained, and the feeling that someone was still searching for her. The scarred dog pressed his head against her arm, calming her with his weight. She held him close, whispering broken words she barely understood. The girl was alive, but lost, trapped in a body with no past. The city was empty, filled only with the cries of animals and the whispers of ghosts. Yet she knew, deep inside, this was not the end of her story. Somewhere out there was the truth of who she was, and why she had survived the crash. And somewhere, beyond the ruins, someone was waiting. Not a soldier, not a hunter, but a man. A stranger whose path would soon cross hers. He would bring warmth, and danger, and a new reason to live. But for now, she was only a girl in the mud, with no name, guarded by a pack of stray dogs. The storm raged on, thunder shaking the broken towers. The dogs howled into the night, their cries mixing with the sound of rain. The girl lifted her eyes to the dark sky, her hands clenched tight. She did not know her name, she did not know her past, but she knew one thing: she would survive, even if she had to crawl with the dogs, Even if she had to fight the shadows, she would not give up, because something inside told her that her story was not finished, and that the world still had a place for her, a place she had yet to find. The girl awoke to the sound of barking, the sharp cries of hungry dogs echoing in the ruins. Her eyes opened slowly, her body stiff and sore from sleeping on broken stone and wet ground. The pack was already moving, searching, digging through piles of garbage and wreckage. She rubbed her eyes, her skin still covered in mud, her stomach twisting in hunger. The scarred dog, the alpha, growled at her softly and nudged her shoulder. He did not attack, did not bite, only pushed her as if telling her to move. Slowly, clumsily, she followed, crawling first, then stumbling to her feet. Her legs wobbled, her body weak, but the dogs accepted her in their circle. Through the ruins they searched, tearing at old bags, sniffing at metal cans. The girl copied, them hands dirty, her face bent close to the ground. Sometimes she found scraps, bones with no meat, crumbs of stale bread. It was not enough, but the dogs shared what little they found, and so she lived. Days passed like this, a rhythm of survival. Rain would fall, thunder would roar, but the pack always moved together. The girl learned to understand them, not words, but signals, the twitch of an ear, the lift of a tail, the warning growl in the throat. The scarred dog was always first, the leader, strong and silent. When he barked, the others obeyed. When he attacked, the others followed. He protected her, always placing himself between her and danger. Once a smaller dog snapped at her for stealing food, and the scarred one struck hard, forcing it back. She began to feel safe with him, more safe than she ever remembered feeling. In his eyes, she saw something strange: acceptance, maybe even trust. Her heart calmed when he was near, as if he was more than just a beast. Sometimes, she wondered if he understood her pain better than any human could. At night, the pack would curl together, their bodies pressed tight to survive the cold. The girl would rest in the middle, her arms wrapped around the scarred dog's neck. His warmth kept her alive. His steady breathing comforted her broken heart. She did not have a name, but in her soul she began to feel like she belonged to something. Yet the world around her was dangerous. Other packs roamed, hungry and violent, always ready for a fight. The streets were filled with shadows, broken buildings, sharp as knives, and sometimes she saw strange lights in the sky, flashing in the distance, filling her chest with fear. Each night she dreamed again, her mind filled with burning metal and screaming voices. She saw herself strapped down, people in armor watching her, bright lights stabbing her eyes. She woke each time with tears and fear, clutching the scarred dog as if he could keep her safe from memories. But the visions would not stop. They haunted her every night, stronger with each dream. One day the pack found something new: a broken store, its door half open. The dogs rushed inside, sniffing, barking, tails raised with excitement. The girl followed, her bare feet silent on the dusty floor. Inside, she found old shelves, broken glass, and boxes left behind long ago. She opened one box with shaking hands and gasped. Inside were cans, sealed and untouched, food not rotten, food still good. Her hands shook as she tried to open it, but she had no tool. The scarred dog barked, and she slammed the can against the wall until it broke. The smell filled the air, rich and strong. The dogs barked wildly. They ate together, faster than ever, their hunger finally calm for a while. The girl licked her hands clean, the taste filling her with energy. For the first time she felt more alive, more human, less like an animal. But that night, as she lay with the pack, she looked at the scarred dog differently. He was not just a leader, not just a beast, but her protector. She pressed her forehead to his, whispering broken words she barely remembered. "Thank you," she said softly, the words shaking in her throat. The dog only huffed, his yellow eyes staring into hers, but he did not move. In that moment, she felt something grow in her heart. Maybe she was not completely lost. Maybe she was not completely broken. Maybe the world had not forgotten her, not while the dogs lived beside her, but deep in the shadows of the ruined city. Danger was moving. Strange figures in armor searched, their boots echoing in the night. They whispered to each other about a lost experiment, a girl who must be found. The girl did not hear them yet, but soon their path would cross, and when it did, her life would change forever, her time as one of the pack was only the beginning. The dogs had given her survival, but a new encounter would give her something more, a human face, a human hand, and a human voice that would touch her heart. For now, she slept, curled tight in the warmth of her family of strays. But the world outside was waiting, full of shadows and secrets. Her story was far from over, and soon she would discover what it meant to live again. The morning sun rose weak over the ruins, light cutting through the broken towers like knives. The girl stretched her arms, her hair tangled, her skin cold with dew. Around her the dogs moved quietly, sniffing the ground. Searching for food, the scarred leader barked once, a deep sound, and the pack began to move. The girl followed, bare feet pressing against wet earth, her eyes scanning the empty street. She had learned to move silently, to listen carefully, because danger was always near. Her stomach growled with hunger, but her heart felt steady. The dogs were with her, her only family, her shield against the cruel world. As they crossed into a wide street full of broken cars, the pack suddenly stopped. The scarred dog lifted his head, ears forward, nose twitching. The others growled low, their bodies tense, tails stiff. The girl froze, her breath catching in her throat, sensing something was wrong. From the shadows of a building, footsteps echoed, slow but heavy. The girl's heart pounded as she saw a figure appear. A man, tall, his body covered in a long coat, his face hidden under a hood. He carried a bag over his shoulder, and in his hand was a metal rod like a weapon. The dogs barked fiercely, circling, ready to attack. The scarred leader stood in front of the girl, his teeth bared, his growl shaking the air. The man froze, staring at the strange sight before him, a wild pack of strays, and in the middle, a girl with mud-stained skin and glowing marks. The girl's breath shook, her eyes wide, her hands trembling at her sides. Part of her wanted to run, to hide, but her feet refused to move. Her gaze locked with the man's, his eyes sharp, but not cruel. He lowered his weapon slowly, raising his free hand in peace. "It's all right," he whispered, his voice low and gentle. The dogs snarled louder, not trusting him, their teeth flashing white in the morning light. The man crouched slightly, his hands still raised, his movements calm. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said again, his eyes fixed on the girl. The girl tilted her head, confused by his tone. His words were strange, but something inside her understood. Her lips parted, but no voice came, only a broken sound. She stepped forward slightly, the scarred dog pressing against her leg to stop her. The man's eyes softened. He saw the fear in her, the hunger, the loneliness. "Are you alone?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. The girl blinked, her mind racing, flashes of memory trying to surface. She saw bright lights, chains, faces she could not name, and then silence. Her hand lifted slowly, almost reaching toward him. But the dogs barked furiously, leaping forward, snapping their jaws at the air. The man stepped back, holding his ground, not striking, not shouting. Instead, he opened his bag, pulling something out with care. It was food, real food, wrapped in cloth, bread, and dried meat. The smell hit the air, strong and warm, and the dogs barked louder, their hunger wild. The girl's stomach twisted, her eyes locked on the food, her body shaking. The man placed it carefully on the ground, then stepped back, his hands open. The scarred dog growled, waiting, his yellow eyes burning into the man. But the girl crouched low, her hands reaching. Grabbing the food quickly, she tore into it with desperation, chewing fast, tears filling her eyes as the taste filled her mouth. The man watched, silent, his face hidden, but his heart heavy. He could see she was not just a wild child, not just a survivor. Her glowing marks, her strange beauty, her broken voice, she was something else, something lost, something hunted, something fragile. And yet, in her eyes, he saw strength, the will to live, the fire to fight. The girl looked at him again, crumbs on her lips, her chest rising fast. Her eyes were full of questions she could not ask. The man gave her a small nod, his voice soft. "You don't have to be afraid of me," he said, almost like a promise. The scarred dog growled again, but less this time. The man did not move closer. He respected the distance. Still, the girl felt something inside her heart, a warmth she had not felt since before the accident. Since before she lost her memory. The dogs circled, uneasy, but the girl stayed, her eyes never leaving the man. In her chest she felt a pull, as if fate itself had brought him here. She did not know his name, he did not know hers, but the moment was strong, a beginning written in silence. The pack barked again, pulling her away, urging her to return to the shadows. The girl hesitated, her hand clutching the last piece of bread. The man stood still, letting her choose, his eyes calm, and in that choice, she knew their paths would cross again. She turned back into the ruins, the dogs guiding her, but her mind stayed on the stranger, on his voice, his kindness, his food. Something inside her whispered that he was different, and that soon, he would change everything. The girl woke with the dogs around her, their bodies warm against the cold night. Her stomach ached, but she still held the memory of the bread, the taste that felt like life. Her mind kept replaying the moment with the stranger, his voice, his eyes, his gift. She did not understand why he stayed calm, why he did not attack, why he showed kindness. The scarred dog moved first, standing tall, sniffing the wind. The pack began to stir, hungry again, restless again. The girl followed them through the broken streets, her bare feet black with dirt, but her thoughts were far away, drifting back to the man. By midday they returned to the same street of ruins. The scarred dog stopped suddenly, his ears sharp, his body tense. The girl's heart raced, and then she saw him again. The man stood there, leaning against a wall, his hood pulled low, his bag over his shoulder. The dogs barked instantly, their growls filling the air, but the man did not lift his weapon. He raised his empty hands. "I brought more," he said softly, his voice carrying through the broken silence. He placed food on the ground again, slowly, gently, no sudden moves. The girl's stomach twisted in hunger, her eyes locked on the food. But the scarred dog stood in her way, his growl deep, his teeth bared. The man crouched low, keeping his distance. "I won't hurt her," he said, his tone steady. "I only want to help." The girl touched the scarred dog's fur, whispering something broken. He looked back at her, his eyes burning, but then he stepped aside. Slowly she walked forward, her body shaking, her hands reaching for the food. The man watched carefully, every movement, every breath careful. She ate quickly, crumbs falling, her eyes flicking between him and the dogs. When she finished, she licked her fingers, hunger fading, but fear still there. The man spoke again, gentle words. "You're not safe out here alone, not safe with soldiers searching." The girl's breath caught. Soldiers, the word sparked. In her head like fire, images filled her mind. Armor, bright lights, cold hands holding her down. She gasped, dropping the last piece of food, her eyes filling with tears. The dogs barked and circled her, confused by her sudden fear. The man lowered his head, his voice softer now. "I don't know what happened to you," he said, "but I can help." She trembled, her lips moving, trying to speak, but only broken sounds came out. Words lost in her throat. The man reached into his bag and pulled out something else. A blanket, worn but warm, folded carefully in his hands. He placed it on the ground and stepped back. The girl looked at it, her hands shaking, the memory of warmth calling to her. She touched it slowly, feeling the fabric, rough but soft against her skin. She pulled it around her shoulders. The first warmth she had felt in so long. Her eyes met his, full of questions, full of confusion. The man gave a small nod, as if saying, "Yes, it's yours." Night came, and the pack circled close again, but the girl did not shiver this time. The blanket held her. She pressed her face into it, the smell of another world filling her nose. It smelled like wood, smoke, and something she could not name. Each day, the man returned, always with food, always with calm words. The dogs still barked, still growled, but they began to quiet faster. The scarred dog never left her side, always watching him with sharp eyes, but even he began to lower his head, to accept the stranger's presence. The man spoke more each time, simple words, careful words. He pointed to objects, saying their names. Stone, he said. Water, he said. Food, he said. The girl listened, repeating broken sounds, her voice weak but growing. For the first time she began to remember speech. Her lips shaped words, clumsy but real. Her eyes lit up when the man nodded, when he smiled faintly at her progress. Her heart beat faster, not with fear, but with something new. The girl began to trust him. Little by little, she let him come closer, sit near the fire he built from scraps of wood. The dogs lay nearby, watchful but calm, and the girl sat wrapped in her blanket. Staring at the flames, the man gave her clothes. Simple but clean, she changed under the watchful eyes of the pack. Her skin no longer cold and bare, her body no longer trembling. She looked at herself, almost human again, not just an animal in the mud. But the nights were still haunted. Dreams of fire, cages, voices calling her name. She would wake crying, clutching the scarred dog. The man watching silently from the fire. He never asked questions, never forced her to speak. He only waited, slowly, carefully. He was becoming something more than a stranger. He was her light in the darkness, her anchor in the storm. The dogs had given her survival, but he gave her hope, and hope was more dangerous, more powerful than any weapon, far away. In the shadows of the broken city, soldiers still searched. Their voices carried in the night, their eyes scanning the ruins. They were getting closer. Their orders clear: find the girl, alive or dead. But for now, under the weak firelight, she sat between the man and the dogs, her heart no longer frozen, her soul no longer empty. She did not know his name. She did not know her own. But for the first time since the accident, she felt alive again. Asterisk, the wind howled through the ruined city, carrying dust and the smell of smoke. The girl sat close to the fire the man had built, her blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders. The dogs lay around the circle, their eyes glowing in the dark, their ears twitching at every sound. The scarred leader kept his head high, always watching, always guarding. The man sat opposite her, silent as always, sharpening a piece of metal into a blade. His eyes would sometimes lift to her, then fall back to his work. The girl chewed on a piece of bread he had given, her eyes flickering with the firelight. But inside her mind, shadows stirred, memories pushing against the broken walls of her thoughts. Every night they came stronger. Visions of fire, cages, men in dark armor. She saw needles, glowing lights, and her own body strapped to a cold table. She heard voices calling her by names she could not understand. Numbers whispered instead of words. Her chest burned when she dreamed, her skin glowing faintly as if the memories lived inside her blood. She would wake, gasping, her cries waking. The pack, the dogs barking wildly. The man would not touch her, but he would speak softly, his voice calm. "You're safe here," he said. "No one will hurt you tonight." The girl clutched the scarred dog, shaking, whispering broken words. But safety was only an illusion, because the city was no longer empty. In the distance, lights flickered, torches, electric lamps carried by armored soldiers. Their boots pounded on the ground, their voices sharp. As they spoke to each other, they were searching, step by step, street by street, hunting for something or someone. The man heard them first, his head snapping up. His blade paused in his hand. The dogs sensed them too, their growls filling the air, low and dangerous. The girl froze, her heart pounding, her body trembling. At the sound of the voices, something inside her screamed that those men had come for her. She remembered one word, a word she had heard in her dreams. Subject. It echoed in her ears, cold and sharp. She saw their helmets, their glowing visors, their weapons raised. Her breath broke in panic, her hands clutching at the dirt as her body shook. The man leaned closer to her, his voice urgent, but calm. "They're looking for you, aren't they?" he said, his eyes narrowing. The girl stared at him, her lips trembling, tears rolling down her face. She did not nod, she did not speak. But the truth was clear in her eyes. The scarred dog stood tall, his body stiff, ready to defend her. The pack circled close, snarling, ready for battle. But the man shook his head, his hand raised. "Not yet," he whispered. "If they see us, we're finished." They moved quickly, the man stamping out the fire, darkness swallowing them. He guided her with a hand gesture, pointing to the ruins deeper inside the street. The dogs followed close, silent now, their paws moving like shadows. The girl stumbled, but the man caught her arm, steadying her with strength. Her heart raced as the voices grew louder. The soldiers now only streets away. She could hear their words clearer. "Target escaped from the crash," one said. "She must be alive." Another replied. Her body shook, the words cutting into her mind like knives. She wanted to run, to scream, but the man crouched beside her. "Stay quiet," he breathed, his eyes sharp with fire. She pressed her lips tight, her tears falling silently onto the dirt. The scarred dog pressed against her side, calming her with his weight. They hid in the ruins until the soldiers passed, their lights sweeping the streets. The girl's body glowed faintly in the dark, her skin alive with strange marks. The man noticed, his eyes widening at the sight. "You're not just lost," he whispered. "You're something more." The girl looked at him, fear filling her eyes. She shook her head, as if begging him not to say it. She did not want to be a weapon. She did not want to be a subject. She only wanted to live, to eat, to be safe with her dogs. But the soldiers would not stop. Their hunt was endless. The man knew this, his jaw tightening as he watched their shadows disappear. He turned to her, his voice firm. "If we stay here, they will find us. We need to move." The girl's heart pounded at his words. She clutched the scarred dog's fur, her eyes darting around the ruins. Where could they go? Where could they hide, if the whole world was searching? The man reached for her hand, his touch strong but careful. "You can trust me," he said, his voice low. "I'll keep you safe." Her eyes filled with tears again, but she did not pull away. The scarred dog growled once, then lowered his head, as if agreeing. The pack followed, their paws ready, their eyes glowing with loyalty. That night they moved deeper into the ruins. The girl walked close to the man, her blanket trailing, her eyes wide in fear. Her memories burned hotter, visions, striking her again and again. She saw herself fighting, glowing, her hands tearing through steel. She screamed in her sleep, her body shaking. The man woke her, his voice steady, his eyes full of worry. "You're not what they made you," he said. "You're more than that." The girl stared at him, her breath shaking, her heart pounding with confusion. She was lost, broken, hunted, but now, for the first time, she was not alone, and even as the shadows of her past closed in, she felt something new rising in her chest strength. The ruins were silent, but the silence was heavy, waiting. The girl sat beside the man, her blanket pulled close, her eyes wide with worry. The scarred dog stood guard at the edge of the broken wall, ears forward, nose twitching. The rest of the pack lay low, their bodies tense, growls deep in their throats. The man sharpened his blade again, his hand steady, but his face grim. He had seen the soldiers' lights the night before. He knew they were closing in. The girl's body glowed faintly in the shadows, her strange marks pulsing with light when her fear grew. She tried to cover them with the blanket, but the glow slipped through, whispering of her secret. Her dreams had grown worse, sharper, louder. She saw herself breaking chains, fire exploding. Around her, soldiers screaming, her hands burned in her visions, her voice crying out in pain and rage, and when she awoke, she would clutch the scarred dog, trembling, her tears staining his fur. The man did not push her, but his eyes told her he understood. "You're powerful," he said quietly one night, "but you're afraid of yourself." She shook her head, pressing her palms against her ears, as if she could silence the truth. "I'm not a weapon," she whispered, her voice broken. "I don't want to be." The scarred dog growled at her words, as if agreeing, as if protecting her from the idea. The man leaned closer, his voice firm, but gentle. "Then don't be what they made you," he said. "Be what you choose to be." His words struck deep, echoing in her chest, louder than the nightmares. But there was no more time, because the soldiers had found them. The first sound was the heavy stomp of boots, echoing down the shattered street. Then came the glow of searchlights, sweeping across broken cars and collapsed buildings. The girl's heart froze, her breath stopping, her body trembling like a trapped animal. The dogs barked furiously, their snarls filling the night. The scarred leader stood tall, his teeth bared, ready for blood. The man pulled the girl behind him, his blade raised, his eyes hard. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice sharp, but she shook her head, her chest burned, her marks glowing brighter than before. The soldiers shouted when they saw the light, their weapons lifting, their voices sharp. "There she is," one cried. "Subject located," another called. The words pierced her like knives, the word subject a chain around her soul. The man stepped forward, his body between her and the soldiers. "You'll have to go through me first," he shouted, his voice cutting through the night. The soldiers hesitated, their lights flashing over him, their weapons steady. "You don't know what she is," one called. "She's dangerous. She's not yours to protect." The girl's tears fell, her body shaking, her hands clutching the blanket tight. The scarred dog pressed against her, growling, waiting for her command. The man turned his head, his eyes locking with hers. "You're not what they say," he told her. "You're more than their lies." Her breath caught, her chest burning, the light from her marks blazing. She saw the choice in front of her, clear as fire and shadow. She could run like an animal, disappear into the ruins with her pack, or she could stand, with the man who believed in her, and fight for her freedom. The soldiers moved forward, their boots pounding, their weapons raised high. The man gripped his blade, his muscles tense, ready to strike though he knew he might fall. The scarred dog barked furiously, the pack snapping their jaws, a storm of teeth and growls. The girl's breath grew heavy, her hands glowing now, her voice trembling with power. Memories surged back, not all, but enough. She remembered chains breaking, soldiers falling, fire bursting from her body. She remembered fear, but also strength, a storm that lived inside her blood. She fell to her knees, clutching her head, screaming as the power rose again. The man grabbed her shoulders, holding her steady. "Listen to me," he shouted. "It's your choice, not theirs." His voice cut through the chaos, stronger than the soldiers' commands, stronger than the memories. Her eyes widened, tears burning, and for the first time she believed him. She stood, her body trembling, but her eyes sharp. The scarred dog stood at her side, the man at her back, the pack circling close. The soldiers shouted, their weapons charging, the glow of their lights blinding, but she no longer felt like prey, no longer felt like a subject. Her chest burned, her marks shining like fire across her skin. Her voice rose, not in fear, but in rage. "I am not your weapon," she cried, her voice shaking the ruins. The ground seemed to tremble beneath her, the air alive with her power. The soldiers staggered, shocked, their voices breaking. The man's eyes widened, not in fear, but in awe. The scarred dog barked, a thunderous sound, the pack howling with him. The night was no longer theirs, it belonged to her. But the choice still burned in her chest, heavy and sharp. Would she unleash the storm inside and destroy, or would she hold it back, fighting not as a weapon, but as a girl who chose love? The man's hand touched her arm, grounding her, his voice steady in her ear. "Choose who you are," he said, "not who they want you to be." Her tears fell, but her heart was steady now. For the first time, she was not afraid of the choice. For the first time, she wanted to live as more than a shadow. The night burned with tension. The ruined street glowing under the soldiers' lights. The girl stood trembling, her chest alive with fire, her glowing marks bright against her skin. The pack circled close, teeth flashing, eyes shining like burning coals. The scarred leader barked once, his growl deep, a command for battle. The soldiers raised their weapons, their voices sharp. "Stand down, subject," one shouted. "Come with us, or be destroyed." The girl shook her head, her tears falling, her hands glowing brighter. "I am not your subject," she whispered, her voice breaking into the night. The man stepped closer, his blade raised, his body shielding her. "You'll never take her," he growled, his voice filled with fire. The soldiers advanced, their boots thundering against broken stone. The pack snarled, ready to strike, their loyalty unshaken. The girl's power surged, fire bursting across her skin. She screamed, the air shaking, dust and ash rising into the sky. The soldiers staggered back, their lights flickering, their weapons trembling in their hands. She stood tall now, no longer prey, no longer broken. Memories slammed into her mind, sharp and painful. She saw herself in chains, her blood taken, her body tested. She remembered voices calling her weapon, calling her experiment. But she also remembered choosing, fighting, surviving, even when they tried to break her. Her body shook, the storm inside ready to explode. The scarred dog pressed against her leg, steadying her, grounding her. The man's voice cut through the chaos, firm and unshaken. "Don't let them decide who you are," he said. "Decide for yourself." The girl lifted her head, her eyes blazing. Her voice rose, strong now, filled with life. "I choose to live," she cried. "Not as your weapon, but as myself." Her power burst outward, a wave of force that shook the street. The soldiers were thrown back, their weapons clattering, their bodies crashing into walls. The pack charged, teeth and claws striking, a storm of fur and fury. The man leaped forward, his blade flashing, his strikes sharp and true. The battle raged, but the girl's light filled the ruins, a fire they could not control. When it ended, the soldiers lay broken, their voices silenced. Some fled into the night, their shouts fading, their hunt unfinished. But none dared face her again, none dared claim her as theirs. The ruins grew quiet, the storm passing, the fire in her chest fading. The girl fell too, her knees, exhausted, trembling, her breath heavy. The scarred dog licked her hand, his eyes steady, loyal as always. The man knelt beside her, his blade lowered, his hand gentle on her shoulder. "You did it," he whispered. "You chose." Tears filled her eyes, hot and endless. She pressed her forehead to his chest, clutching his coat. "I don't want to be alone anymore," she whispered, her voice weak. "You're not alone," he said, his voice soft. "Not as long as I'm here." The pack curled around them, their bodies pressing close, warm and protective. The scarred dog lay at her side, his steady breath a promise of loyalty. The man's hand held hers, strong and sure, and for the first time since the accident, she felt safe. Days passed, and they moved deeper into the world beyond the ruins. The soldiers' hunt grew weaker, their search fading. The girl learned to speak more, her voice growing stronger with each word. The man taught her names, taught her choices, taught her life beyond fear. At night they built fires, and she laughed for the first time. The sound was strange, broken, but real. The dogs barked with joy. The man smiled faintly, and the ruins no longer felt like chains, but like memories left behind. The girl began to change, no longer only survivor, no longer only shadow. Her strength was not only in her power, but in her heart. She chose not to be weapon, not to be subject. She chose to be herself, free and alive. And in that choice, she found something she never expected. The man's hand always near, his voice always calm, his eyes always steady. The warmth of love, the bond of trust. Not a cage, not a command, but a new beginning. The scarred dog walked at her side, his pack following close. Together they were not weak, not lost, not broken. Together they were a family, made of beast, man, and girl, reborn. And for the first time, she believed in tomorrow. The wind carried their steps into the horizon, the ruins behind them fading into shadows of the past. The girl lifted her eyes to the rising sun, her chest steady, her voice whispered soft, full of hope. "My life begins now," she said, her words carried by the wind. The man's smile was faint, but his eyes burned with fire. The dogs barked into the dawn, their cries full of life, and the world opened before them, wide and waiting.